independent India was to decide the type of economic system which would be the most suitable for India. Economic system refers to an arrangement of weight center problems of an economy are solved. After the freedom, leaders of independent India like Jawaharlal Nehru was confused with regarding the economic system to be followed in India. Some leaders were in favor of socialist economy. However, in a democratic country like India, complete dilution of private ownership was not possible, as was possible in case of former Soviet Union. Capitalist economic system did not appeal to Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister, as under this system there would be less chances of improvement in quality of life of majority of people. As a result, mixed economic with the best features of both socialist and capitalist economy was adopted by the Indian government. In this view, India would be socialist society with strong public sector but also with private property and democracy. After adopting the mixed economic system, the next important step for the government was to revive the poor, backward, and stagnant economy inherited from the British rule. For the development of Indian economy, it is necessary for government to plan for the economy known as economic planning. Economic planning can be defined as making a major economic decision by the conscious decision of determinate authority on the basis of comprehensive survey of the economy as a whole. The Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948 and Directive Principle of Indian Constitution assigned a leading role to a public sector. Private sector was also encouraged to be a part of plan efforts. To make economic planning effective, the Government of India set up Planning Commission in 1950 under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. The purpose of commission was to carefully assess the human and physical resources of the car and she and to prepare the plans for the effective use of resources. The Planning Commission fixed the planning period at 5 years, which begins the era of 5-year plan. So Aditya, can you explain what is goals of 5-year plan?
The 5-year plans have been concerned with the removal of economic backwardness in the country and to make India develop economy. The 5-year plan have also taken care to ensure the weaker sections of people population benefit from the economic progress of the country. The first 5-year plan was launched by a Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in the Parliament. It was launched for a period starting from 1st April 1951 and ending on 31st March 1956. 12th 5-year plan of the Government of India 2012 to 17 was India's last 5-year plan. In between these years, some annual plans were also introduced. The basic goals are growth, modernization, self-reliance, equity. Growth. Stagnation during the British rule forced the planners to make economic growth as first and the fourth most effective objective of Indian plans. Growth refers to increase in the country's capacity to produce the output of goods and services within the country. Growth implies either a large stock of productive capital or the large size of supporting services like transport and banking, or an increase in the efficiency of productivity, capital and service. A good indicator of economic growth in the language of economic study increases in the gross domestic product. GDP refers to market value of all final goods and services produced in the country during a period of 1 year. Increase in GDP or availability of goods and services enable people to enjoy a more rich and varied life. Share of service sector in GDP increased. By 1990, the share of service sector was 40.59% more than that of agricultural industry. This phenomenon of growing share of the service sector were accurate in the post 1991, which marked the beginning of globalization in the country.
Planners have always recognized the need for modernization of society to raise the standard of living of people. Modernization includes first adoption of new technology, which is modernization aims to increase the production of goods and services through use of new technology. Second, changing our social outlook, which is modernization also requires changing social outlook such as gender empowerment or providing equal rights to women. A society will be more civilized and prosperous if it makes use of the balance of women in the workplace. The third major objective is to make the government economy self-reliant. Self-reliance under the Indian condition means overcoming the need of external assistance. In other words, it means to have development through domestic resources to promote economic growth and modernization. The 5-year plan stressed on the use of own resources in order to reduce our dependence on foreign countries. The policy of self-reliance was considered unnecessary because of two reasons. To reduce for independence, as India was recently freed from foreign control, it is necessary to reduce our dependence on foreign countries, especially for food. So stress should be given attained to self-reliance. To avoid foreign interference, it was feared that dependence on imported food supplies, foreign technology, and foreign capital may increase. Foreign interference in the policy of our country. Further, Lakshay will explain about the equity.
Equity. The objective of growth, modernization, and self reliance by themselves may not improve the kind of life which people are living. So, it is important to ensure the benefits of economic prosperities and availed by all sections of the economy. In addition to objective of growth, modernization, and self reliance, equity is also important. According to equity, every Indian should not able to meet his or her basic needs, and inequity in the distribution of wealth should be reduced. Next line in shortly, equity aims to raise the standard of living of all the people and promote social justice. Now Chirag will tell about the agriculture sector.
Agriculture. At the time of independence, the land tenure system was characterized by intermediaries who merely collected rent from the actual tillers of the soil. Low productivity of the agriculture sector forced India to import food from the United States of America. The agriculture sector accounted for the largest share of workforce with approximately 70 to 75%. So agricultural development was focused right from the first 5-year plan. Features or problem of agriculture. Low productivity. Indian agriculture sector was known for its low productivity. Lack of knowledge was responsible for stagnation in this sector. Second, disguised unemployment. It refers to a state in which more people are engaged in work than are really needed. There were high incidence of disguised unemployment in the sector during 1950 and 1990. High dependency on rainfall. Due to poor agriculture techniques, farmers depended largely on the rainfall. There was minimum growth of the sector in the year that received the least rainfall. Policies for growth of agriculture. The measures undertaken to promote the growth in the agriculture sector can be broadly characterized as land reforms and green revolution. Now I want Madhav to tell everyone about the land reform system.
Land reforms primarily refers to change in the ownership of landholding. There was a great need for land reforms in a country like India, where majority of its population still depends on agriculture. Land reforms were needed to achieve the objective of equality in agriculture. Abolition of intermediaries. Indian government took various steps to abolish intermediaries and to make tillers the owners of the land. Aim behind land to the tiller. The idea behind the step was that ownership of land would give incentives to the actual tillers to make improvements and to increase output. Tenants do not have any incentive to make improvements on land since it is owner of the land who benefits more from higher output. Ownership of land will enable the tiller to make profit from the increased output. The abolition of intermediaries brought 200 lakh tenants into direct contact with the government. The ownership rights granted to tenants gave them the incentive to increase output, and this contributed to growth in agriculture. However, the goal of equity was not fully served by abolition of intermediaries because in some areas the former zamindars continued to own large areas of land by making use of some loopholes in the legislation. In some cases, tenants were evicted and zamindars claimed to be self-cultivators. Even after getting the ownership of land, the poorest of the agricultural laborers did not benefit from land reforms. Now let's hear from Kabir about land ceiling. Land ceiling refers to the fixing the specified limit of land which could be owned by an individual. Beyond the specified limit, all land belonging to a particular person would be taken over by the government and will be allotted to the landless cultivators and small farmers. The purpose of land ceiling was to reduce the concentration of land ownership in few hands. Land ceiling helped to promote equity in agricultural sector. However, the land ceiling legislation was challenged by the big landlords that delayed its implementation. This delay time was used by them to get the land registered in the name of close relatives, thereby escaping from legislation. Land reforms were successful in Kerala and West Bengal because government of these states were committed to the policy of land reforms. Unfortunately, other states did not have the same level of commitment, and vast inequality in landholding continued.
New agricultural strategy was adopted in India during the third plan, that is during 1960s. The traditional agricultural practices followed in India were gradually being replaced by modern technology and agricultural practices. The aim of this strategy was to raise agricultural production and productivity in selected regions of the country through the introduction of modern inputs like fertilizers, credit, marketing facilities, etc. What is Green Revolution? At the time of independence, about 75% of the country's population was dependent on agriculture. India's agriculture widely depends on the monsoon, and in case of shortage of monsoons, the farmers had to face a lot of troubles. Moreover, the productivity in the agricultural sector was very low due to the use of outdated technology and absence of required infrastructure. As a result of intensive and continued efforts of many agricultural scientists, this stagnation in agriculture was permanently broken by the Green Revolution. Green Revolution refers to the large increase in production of food grains due to the use of high yielding variety HYV or miracle seeds, especially for wheat and rice. Green Revolution is a spectacular advancement in the field of agriculture. Dr. Norman E. Borlaug, an American agriculture scientist, is considered to be the father of Green Revolution. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1970 for breeding higher yielding varieties. In India, it was mainly found by M.S. Swaminathan. HYV seeds were the main reason for agricultural revolution. Agricultural revolution occurred primarily due to the miracle of new wonder seeds which raised agricultural yield per acre to incredible heights. These seeds can be used in those places where there are adequate facilities for drainage and water supply. As compared to other ordinary seeds, these seeds need heavy doses of chemical fertilizers to get the largest possible production. So, to derive benefit from HYV seeds, Indian farmers need to have reliable irrigation facilities and financial resources to purchase fertilizers and pesticides. Indian economy experienced the success of Green Revolution in two phases. In the first phase, from mid 60s to mid 70s, the use of HYV seeds were restricted to more affluent states like Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc. Further, the use of HYV seeds primarily benefited the wheat growing regions only. In the second phase, from mid 70s to mid 80s, HYV technology spread to a large number of states and benefited more variety of crops. How about Lakshay tell us about the important effects of Green Revolution?
Important effects of Green Revolution. The spread of Green Revolution technology enabled India to achieve self-sufficiency in food grains. India was no longer at the mercy of America or any other nation for the food requirements, attaining marketable surplus. Growth in agricultural output makes a difference to the economy or only when large proportion of this increase is sold in the market. Fortunately, a good proportion of rice and wheat produced during the Green Revolution was sold by farmers in the market. Buffer stock of food grains. The Green Revolution was enabled the government to produce sufficient amount of food grains to build a stock which could be used in times of food shortage. Benefit to low income groups. As large proportions of food grains were sold by the farmers in the market, their price declined relative to the other items of consumption. The low income groups who spend a large percentage of their income on food benefit from the decline in relative prices. Risk involved under Green Revolution. While the nation had immensely benefited from Green Revolution, the technology was involved was not free from risk. The HVV seeds were more prone to attack by pests, so there was a risk that small farmers who adopted this technology could lose everything in a pest attack. However, the risk was considerably reduced by services rendered by research institute eh, established by the government. There was a risk that costly inputs, HYV seeds, fertilizers, etc., required under Green Revolution will be increased disparities between small and big farmers since only the big farmers could afford the required inputs. So, however, due to favorable steps taken by the government, these fears didn't come true. The government provided loan at a low rate to small farmers so they could have also access to these inputs. Since the small farmers could obtain the requirement inputs, the output on the small farmer equaled the output on the large farms in course of time. As a result, the Green Revolution benefited the small as well as the rich farmers. Now, Aditya Tanwar will debate over subsidies to agriculture.
Subsidies, the contact of agriculture, means that the farmers get input at a lower price than the market prices. In other words, subsidies is the financial assistance provided by the government to producers to fulfill its social welfare objectives. During the initial phase of Green Revolution, new technology was looked up as beginning risky by the farmers. So it was necessary for the government to grant subsidies to provide an incentive for adoption of the new HYV technology. However, with the passage of time, there have been debate over the huge amount of subsidies granted by the government. Economic in favor of subsidies. The government should continue with agriculture subsidies as farming in India continues to be a risky business. Majority of the farmers are very poor and they will not be able to afford the required inputs without the subsidies. Eliminating subsidies will increase the income inequality between the rich and the poor farmers and will evaluate the ultimate goal of equity.
Economics. Subsidies were granted by the government to provide an incentive for adoption of the new HPV technology. So after the wide acceptance of technology, subsidies should be phased out as their purpose has been served. Subsidies do not benefit the poor and small farmers. It benefits of substantial account of subsidy go to fertilizer industry and prosperous farmers. Therefore, there is no case for continuing with subsidies. It does not benefit the target group and it is huge burden on the government finances. Critical pressure for agricultural development. Indian economy inherited stagnant and backward agriculture sector from the British rule. So immediately after the independence, Indian government undertook various means to improve the condition of agriculture. The land reform measures and green revolution were the greatest achievement of the Indian government in enhancing the between 1950 and 1990, there had been substantial increase in the agricultural productivity. Agricultural productivity refers to output per hectare of land. As a result of Green Revolution, India became self-sufficient in food production. Land reforms resulted in abolition of Zamindari system. The proportion of GDP between 1950 and 1990 contributed by agriculture declined significantly, but not the population depending on it. Around 65% of the country's population continued to be employed in agriculture even till 1990. Agricultural output could have been grown with much less people in sector, but industrial and service sector were unable to absorb the extra people involved in agriculture. The involvement of such large people of population in agriculture was regarded as an important failure of policies followed by 1950 to 1990.
Industrial development. The developing countries like India can progress only if they have a good industrial sector. Industry provides employment which is more stable than the employment in agriculture. Industrialization promotes modernization and overall prosperity. Due to this reason, 5-year plans stress a lot on the industrial development. At the time of independence, the variety of industries was very limited. The cotton textile and jute industries were mostly developed in India. There were only two well managed iron and steel firms, one in Jamshedpur and the other in Kolkata. So there was strong need to expand the industrial base with a variety of industries. Role of public sector in industrial development. At the time of independence, the big question facing the policy makers was to decide the role of government and the private sector in industrial development. There was a need for a leading role of the public sector due to the following reason. First, there was shortage of capital with private sector. Private and entrepreneurs did not have the capital to undertake investment in industrial ventures required for the development of Indian economy.
At the time of independence, Tatas and Birlas were the only well-known private entrepreneurs. As a result, government had to make industrial investment through public sector undertakings. Second, there was a lack of incentive for private sector. The Indian market was not big enough to encourage private industrialists to undertake major projects even if they had capital to do so. Due to limited size of the market, there was low level of demand for the industry goods. The objective of equity and social welfare of the government could be achieved only through direct participation of the state in the process of industrialization. As a result, state had complete control over those industries that were vital for the economy. The policies of private sector had to complementary to those for the public sector, with public sector leading the way. Now let's hear from Aditya about Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 and classification of industries.
Industrial policy is a comprehensive package of policy measures which covers various issues connected with different industrial enterprises of the country. Industrial policy is essential for devising various procedures, principles, rules, and regulations for controlling industrial enterprises of the country. After the Industrial Policy 1948, Indian economy had to face a series of economic and political changes which necessitated the need for a fresh industrial policy for the country. So, on 30th April 1956, a second industrial policy resolution was adopted in India, which also formed the basis of second five-year plan. The 1956 policy emphasized the need to expand the public sector. Classification of industries. According to Industrial Plan Policy Resolution 1956, the industries were reclassified into three categories, that is, Schedule A, Schedule B, and Schedule C. Schedule A. This first categorized industries which would be exclusively owned by the state. In this schedule, 17 industries were included like arm and association, atomic energy, heavy and core industries, aircraft, etc. Schedule B. In this schedule, 12 industries were placed which would be progressively state owned. The state would take the incentive to setting up industries and private sectors will implement efforts of the state. This schedule includes industries like aluminium, other mining industries, etc. Schedule C. This schedule considered of remaining industries which are to be in the private sector. The state would facilitate and encourage the development of all these industries. These industries were controlled by the state through a system of license enforced under Industries Act 1951.
An industrial license, a written permission from the government to an industrial unit to manufacture goods. The Industries Act 1951 empowered the government to issue licenses for setting up of new industries, expansion of existing ones, and diversification of products. According to industrial licensing, no new industry was allowed unless a license is obtained from the government. It was easier to obtain a license if the industrial unit was established in an economically backward area. In addition, such units were given certain concessions such as tax benefits and electricity at low tariff. The purpose of this policy was to promote regional equality. License was needed even if an existing industry was to expand output or diversify production. License to expand production was given only if the government was convinced that there is a need for larger quantity of goods in the economy. What was the small scale industry? How about Chirag? Tell us about that.
The Village and Small Scale Industries Committee (KAVI) committee recognized the possibility of using small scale industries to promote rural development. A small scale industry is defined with reference to maximum investment allowed on the assets of a unit. The limit has changed from rupees 5 lakh in 1950 to present limit of rupees 1 crore. Important points about small scale industries. First, employment generation. Small scale industries are more labor intensive, that is, they use more labor than the large scale industries and therefore they generate more employment. After agriculture, small scale industries provide employment to the largest number of people in India. Need for protection from big firms. Small scale industries cannot compete with the big industrial firms. They can flourish only when they are protected from the large firms. So various steps were taken by our government for their growth. First, reservation of products. Government reserved production of a number of products for the small scale industries. The criteria for reserving the product depend on the ability of these units to manufacture the goods. Various concessions are also provided by government. Small scale industries were also given concessions such as lower excise duty and bank loan at lower rate of interest. Foreign trade. Foreign trade in India include all import and export to and from India. India entered into plant development era in 1950s, and at that time import substitution was a major element of India's trade and industrial policy. In 1950, India's share in total world trade was 1.78%. Trade policy import substitution. In order to be self-reliant in vital sectors, India has followed the strategy of replacing many imports by domestic production. In the first 7 plans, trade was characterized by an inward-looking trade strategy. Technically, this strategy is called import substitution. Import substitution refers to a policy of replacement of substitution of import by domestic production. The basic aim of the policy was to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. Reason for import substitution. The policy of protection in the form of import substitution is based on the notion that industries of developing countries like India were not in position to compete against the goods produced by more developed economies. With protection, they will be able to compete in the due course of time. Restriction on import was necessary as there was a risk of drain of foreign exchange reserves on the import of luxury goods. Now I want Bhumika to tell everyone about the critical appraisal of industrial
The
development.
achievements of India's industrial sector during the first 7 plans are impressive indeed. The proportion of GDP contributed by the industrial sector increased in the period from 11.8% in 1950 to 1951 to 24.6% in 1990 to 1991. This rise in the industry's share of GDP is an important indicator of development. The 6% annual growth rate of industrial sector during the period is also admirable. Indian industry was no longer restricted to cotton textiles and jute. It also included engineering goods and a wide range of consumer goods. The industrial sector became well diversified by 1990 largely due to public sector. The promotion of small scale industries gave opportunities to people with small capital to get into business. New investment opportunities helped in generating more employment, in promoted growth with equity. Protection from foreign competition enabled the development of indigenous industries in the areas of electronics and automobile sector which otherwise could not have developed. Our policies were inward oriented and so we failed to develop a strong export sector. Due to restrictions on imports, some domestic producers made no sincere efforts to improve the quality of their goods and it forced the Indian consumers to purchase whatever is produced by them. The domestic industry failed to achieve international standards of product quality. Licensing policy helped the government to monitor and control the industrial production. However, excessive regulation by the government created two difficulties, which were misused by industrial houses. Some big industrialists would get a license not for starting a new firm but to prevent competitors from starting new firms. The cumbersome and complex procedures for obtaining license was very time consuming. A lot of time was spent on industrialists in trying to obtain a license. Public sector make remarkable contribution by creating a strong industrial base, developing infrastructure and promoting development of backward areas. So what's the conclusion? The progress of Indian economy in 3 sectors can be summarized as: first, in agricultural sector, India became self-sufficient in food production due to green revolution. Land reforms resulted in abolition of zamindari system. Second, in industrial sector, the industry becoming far more diversified compared to the situation at independence. However, excessive government regulations prevented their growth. Many economists were dissatisfied with the performance of public sector enterprises. Third, in trade sector, our policies were oriented, and so we failed to develop a strong export sector. The domestic producers were protected against foreign competition in order to gain self reliance. However, this did not give them the incentive to improve the quality of goods that they produced.